not just by a Holy Mother, but also by those hands on the outside, those hands that are doing the holding that I believe we truly can relax into. But I have a confession to make. I don't have it all figured out. Friendship, self-love, divine love, love between clergy and laity, love where two or more people choose to commit to one another as long-term partners. In fact, I keep forgetting and then remembering throughout recent weeks that this Valentine's Day was the 24th anniversary of the start of my first and only marriage in 1985 when I was 19. We lasted for 4.5 years, which I usually think of as a success for a young lesbian couple with very little support, who were not taught how to do self-love, healthy boundaries, or healthy communication at any point during our formal educations. But you know, it took me a long time to reframe that divorced marriage as a success. I did break some vows, and there have been many times during and since when I've noticed that my light gets clouded over, really clouded over. I do not always feel held. I am not always holding. I am not always able to give from a place of fullness as I was advised upon becoming a spiritual teacher in my Chadaliya Sufi order. I often need to drink from the well first, and sometimes I can't even find the well. The good news is, because I don't have this love thing all figured out, I'm an expert in the questions. They never cease to engage me, and I'm an avid collector of answers. Some deeply satisfying, some incomplete, like some of the recorded music in today's chapel, where parts send me into transcendent unity and other parts offer theology that doesn't quite fit, that needs to be engaged. Islamic Sufi poet Jalaluddin Rumi tells us through Coleman Barks' translation that 1,000 half-loves must be forsaken to take one whole heart home. I do love myself. I was given a head start. My parents loved me, and they actually did a pretty good job of it. They affirmed me exactly as I am. They cheered me on, cherished me, even often thought I was fabulous. I am forever grateful for that. My dad had all these games he'd play with me at bedtime. I would bounce up and down on his king-size bed while he sang distinctly Jewish tunes. Hipsy pipsy pipsy poo, hipsy pipsy poo. And then when he finished, I'd jump into his arms and he'd catch me. And then he'd tuck me into the top bunk. After the common good night, sleep tight, don't let the bedbugs bite, my dad would go on and on rhyming and making me laugh and sometimes driving me crazy. Go fly a kite, don't catch a fright, I love you with all my might. With all his might. My dad, at 6'4" and lots of pounds, was pretty mighty. When he hugged me, I had to take a deep breath first. There was nowhere for my face to go for air in the embrace. He told me at least once every day that he loved me, and I usually answered, I know, in that kid-inflected, geez, Dad, let it go sort of way. And in my early teens, when I came out to my Unitarian Universalist mother, she brought out a box of chocolates to share. And the next day, when I came home from school, the word love was spelled out on the counter in strawberries. It was a little weird. But my parents often failed to set boundaries. I have memories of unlimited popsicles at Dad's house, late nights with no curfew, my own unchecked teenage substance abuse. My parents didn't always love themselves very well. My dad smoked multiple packs of cigarettes every day. He struggled with drinking and gambling, and he died when I was 12. My mom still seems to live more fully through my life than through her own. She often loves me by placing me above her, which leaves me unable to embrace her own power as a role model. My parents definitely didn't love each other very well. Their relationship actually started as an affair. My father continued to have affairs, and my parents divorced when I was 7. In fact, my dad moved out on my birthday, while my friends and I partied at a Howard Johnson's restaurant. It took me years and photos and prodding from my mother to recover that memory, though I have vivid memories of nightmares and crying alone in my room. Still, they loved me with all their might. I had a spiritual teacher once who expressed concern that I always used feminine language for the divine, never masculine language. I think she wisely noticed that perhaps I was in overreaction and missing out on some aspects of the holy. She wanted me to be able to visualize a masculine presence that could hold me, that could maybe do it a bit more consistently than my father had. One who, for example, wouldn't leave. At the time, the only masculine aspect of the divine that I could relate to in any way was the Hindu elephant god, Ganesh, remover of obstacles. Though my vision of Ganesh is got a few more pounds on it. Through working with this teacher, I retrieved a wonderful memory of a time when I was very young and got to go on an elephant ride. I think I was about 3 with my grandparents at the Kansas City Zoo. When my teacher Camilla would counsel me to let go, we would together visualize me resting atop Ganesh, remover of obstacles. I could feel the way his great body would languidly sway as he walked, and how I was held by his might. But by then, I was well into my 30s. As early as age 11, I became obsessed with finding my partner. Perhaps even with all of my parents' feminism on this matter, I was still well socialized to be a girl, incomplete without an other. Someone I could share my thoughts and feelings with, someone who would really know me. After my father died, every night for many years, I would lie in bed and tell him that I loved him. It was a sort of penance for all the times I said, "I know," instead of saying it back. It was also, for me raised an atheist, the beginning of prayer. Someone bigger who had sometimes held me, and who had no right to leave, had left many times. Maybe someone else was there. Something I could not see with eyes or touch with hands, and so my praying began. Years later, a friend I was dating told me she felt me still buried under the ground with my father. She sparked a poem in which I wrote, "Inside my heart is a stone with a heart inside. There are locked treasures without maps or X markings." And I also wrote, "Mommy, I hate you for not being Daddy, and Daddy, I hate you for being good enough and moving on. Who can I yell at to forgive you?" According to my current holy text of love, Perfect Love, Imperfect Relationships by spiritual psychotherapist John Welwood, hatred actually contains its own intelligence and truth. It is a signal that we are cut off from ourselves and the power of our being. This is what we most hate, feeling cut off from our power, our juice, our freedom, our ease, because of this bind we're in. Wellwood says, "We would like and often expect relative human love to be absolute, providing a reliable, steady flow of attunement, unconditional acceptance, and understanding. When this doesn't happen, we take it personally, regarding this as someone's fault, our own for not being good enough, or others for not loving us enough. But the imperfect way that our parents or anyone else has loved us has nothing to do with whether love is trustworthy or whether we are lovable." Wellwood advises, letting yourself connect to the pain of your disconnect puts you in touch with a certain tenderness or vulnerability, which is a signal that your heart is close at hand. This brings you back to yourself, which is the medicine for the disconnect. By meeting yourself in the place where you feel unmet, something new and powerful happens. you start to inhabit yourself. You re-inhabit your lonely heart and bring it back to life. 1,000 half-loves must be forsaken to take one whole heart home. Where is that whole heart's home? For me, it's a feeling state. I know when I'm there, I become the sacred child, the holy parent, and sometimes even those mighty hands on the outside, holder and held. One time, while I was experiencing my whole heart's home in my Portland, Oregon community of Sufi beloveds, I wrote this. We circle up for prayer with hearts like thirsty hummingbirds, chanting the beauty, risking the longing, being the holding of hands. Our rapid wing beats hover us, illumined in the spheres, as beak to nectar, sip to sip, we feast on infinite grace. I've read a lot of books on relationship addiction. I've spent time working the steps of Codependence Anonymous. I've looked for and found God, and still these yearnings dominate my quiet hours. The yearning for my heart and body's partner, the yearning for consistent full merge with spiritual experience. And even though I know the practices that can often take me into that full merge, like my parents, I too fail to set boundaries, abandoning the draw of spiritual practice for the half-loves of internet TV and too much processed sugar. My Sufi brother Halim says, here is your comfort zone, and here is your panic zone, and everything in between is your growth zone. And I want to grow, but 1,000 half-loves must be forsaken. And oh, what a forsaking some of those moments in the panic zone. The beauty of people who weren't quite the right fit, chocolate melting in my mouth, songs I argue with even as I belt them out, and the courage to make space for my whole heart. Every forsaken half-love has been a gift. As Wellwood writes, human love provides entry into something even greater than human relatedness. In helping us connect with the radiant aliveness within us, it reveals our essential beauty and power, where we are one with life itself. You experience the essential dignity and nobility of your existence, which does not depend on anyone else's approval or validation. In this deep sense of union with life, you are set free from fear. You realize you are not wounded, have never been wounded, and cannot be wounded. I'm going to close with a poem I wrote in my late 20s on a day when my whole heart was home, but I left it over there, so I'll be right back. It's called Single, Growing New Roots in Spring. A dozen daffodils surround one bright orange gerbera daisy in a clear curvaceous vase, showing off leggy green stems. All this atop the stereo speaker, which not long ago sang out lush, low tones and outrageously bittersweet lyrics. Friends in photos all over the walls. A poem from one former lover, a twilight forest drawing by another. Me in a chair reading a book I'm crying all the way through about women and community and carving our bold new paths. The cats playing with crusts from leftover pizza, crunching and getting them stuck to their paws, thrown up in the air. The neighborhood children outside my window chanting and stomping their rhyming games, yelling, "Here it comes, Mama, here it comes," as the season's first pass of the ice cream truck chimes home, home on the range. Last week, I was drawn to a forest and the ripples mountain rocks make in rushing water, icicle clear and alive with bubbles. Yesterday, 4 of us together in a sacred garden, reading aloud our own poetry. Later today, a date for tennis with an intimate friend. Tonight, a party. For now, if I can leave the phone cradling itself in another room and cast myself into the slanting daffodil sun, if I can be exactly here, this moment, this room in my house, this woman writing poetry, if I choose to call this love, who will challenge me?